Hello, cruel, cruel world. My name is Dr. Shaham Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. Okay, so James Corden has always been a polarising character even before omelette-gate. And during that incident, he admitted to being rude and ungracious. And this incident ended up in him being banned from a New York restaurant. This all happened pretty recently in mid-October 2022. So in this episode of A Psych for Sore Minds, I'm going to answer the question, was this behaviour associated with narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder? So a bit of background context and then we'll get into that assessment. Sit back, relax, grab your eggshells and welcome to A Psych for Sore Minds. So James Corden, actor, comedian, was briefly banned from Balthazar in Manhattan by the owner, Keith McNally, who claimed in a social media post that Corden had been extremely nasty to his staff on 2 separate occasions. And the incident didn't end there. James Corden addressed this in his talk show, The Late Late Show, and he said he was reacting to the fact that his wife was given food that she was allergic to and that the wrong order had come to his table 3 times. And James Corden said, and I quote, "I didn't shout or scream, I didn't get out of my seat, I didn't call anybody names or use derogatory language." And he said this on his CBS show. "But the truth is, I made a rude comment and I was wrong. It was an unnecessary comment. It was ungracious to the server." And then after McNally posted the story online, it sparked outrage on social media. And in an Instagram post, the popular restaurant owner described Corden as, and I quote, "the most abusive customer to my Balthazar servers since the restaurant opened 25 years ago." So he's not just saying that, he had a little spat and he spat his dummy out. He's saying he's the most abusive customer. So those are pretty damning words. And then McNally claimed that Corden was extremely nasty to a member of staff after he found hair in his food. And then he referred to James Corden as, and I quote, "a tiny cretin of a man." First of all, can I just say that is really, really unfair. He's certainly not tiny. And McNally claimed that the celebrity demanded a round of free drinks this second and also wanted the restaurant to take care of the drinks he'd already ordered, as in, give that shit to me for free. In a second incident, Mr. McNally claimed that Corden complained that there was a little bit of egg white mixed in with the egg yolk in his wife's omelette. And the kitchen remade the dish, but unfortunately sent it with fries instead of salad. And according to McNally, that's when James Corden began to yell like crazy to the server, shouting, "You can't do your job! You can't do your job! Maybe I should go in the kitchen and cook the omelette myself." Okay, so let's go over some basic traits of what a narcissist is, and then we'll double back and reflect on James Corden's behaviour. So, a narcissist has an exaggerated self-importance. That's pretty obvious. That's kind of what the term narcissism means. They have a sense of entitlement and they require constant and excessive admiration. They expect to be recognised as superior even when they don't necessarily have the achievements or the skill to warrant it. They can kind of exaggerate their talents and their ego. They take advantage of other people if they don't get what they want, and they have an inability or at least an unwillingness to recognise the needs and feelings of other people. They are often envious of others and they believe that others envy them. So that's kind of like a baseline of what a narcissist is. Now let's look specifically about how narcissists behave during a confrontation or a disagreement or a criticism, because that's basically what we're examining here. So how would a narcissist react? They would monopolize the conversation. They would belittle or look down on people they perceive as being inferior. They would expect special favors and unquestioning compliance with their expectations. Also, they become impatient or angry if they don't receive special treatment. They might have significant interpersonal feelings or even feel slighted. They might react with rage or contempt or try and belittle the other person. And they have difficulty regulating emotions and behaviours. Finally, they behave in a kind of arrogant or haughty manner, and they come across as conceited, boastful, or pretentious. And this is all kind of surrounded with secret feelings of insecurity, shame, vulnerability, and humiliation. So I've outlined the context of the accusations against Corden. I've outlined what a narcissistic person is, or the character traits. How do those two align? So let's look at the behaviour. Well, here are my thoughts. The first thing is that there are 2 very different versions of events. A lot of people are assuming that James Corden was automatically in the wrong here because he's perceived by some, not all, people as being a bit kind of up himself, a bit egotistical, that he's got a huge ego, and he does have previous kind of incidents. So the one that I'm specifically thinking about is Patrick Stewart, otherwise known as Professor X. He had this like live spat at an award ceremony. I'll put the link in the YouTube description, but James Corden is acting like a sport brat, and he's being quite disrespectful to somebody who's a bulwark, who's a respected kind of actor. But anyway, I'm just saying that he's got previous, plus this incident in the restaurant was witnessed by many staff. So that does kind of indicate that James Corden's version of events isn't accurate, and what the restaurant owner is suggesting is the truth. Having said all that, I was wondering whether it's possible for both of them to be true. So if he did act in a disrespectful manner, but he didn't necessarily raise his voice, which is basically what James Corden is saying. So he's not denying that he wasn't rude. He's saying he's rude, but he denies that he sort of was very hostile or raising his voice. I don't think that it's possible for both versions of events to be true, because even though there's some overlap, there are some inconsistencies. So James Corden doesn't claim that he demanded free drinks. And he said this second, which is really relevant, I think, because it shows massive entitlement. And the restaurant owner said specifically that he shouted. You know, when the omelette came back the third time, he shouted. He didn't sort of make an insulting comments under his breath, as Corden claims. He shouted at a member of staff. So I guess the point I'm trying to say is there's two versions of events, and my analysis will depend on which one's true, which, to be fair, we can speculate on, but we can't really know for definite unless we're James Corden or unless we're the staff members. So what's my analysis? Before I get to that, I just want to quickly tell you about my channel, A Schmike for Small Minds. It's a smorgasbord of topics related to true crime, mental illness, and the crossover between the two. Sometimes I do kind of high-profile cases like this that are not related to crime, but are related to aggression. I am your third favourite Indian, gold-tooth, London-based forensic psychiatrist YouTuber. I implore you to subscribe. Not only does it help me out immeasurably, but if you don't subscribe, then you will be getting a hair, my friend, in food in restaurants for the rest of your life. And I'm sorry to say this, but I can't always guarantee that it's a hair from somebody's head. If you're interested in this kind of topic, I've done a few other videos. I'll put the links below. I've told you about the difference between a narcissist and a psychopath. I've told you how you can tell if you're a victim of narcissistic abuse. And I've also talked about Danny Masterson's Scientology sexual assault trial recently. Okay, that's enough background now, enough waffling. I'll get back into the situation. So, if we're giving Corden the benefit of the doubt, then he's basically being, I can picture that he would be very annoyed, very pissed off, very distressed if 3 times in a row the waitresses has got it wrong. So in this scenario, I do think he's being rude. I do think he's being obnoxious, but crucially, not necessarily being narcissistic or somebody that would have narcissistic personality disorder. So this doesn't, if that scenario is true, then I don't think that by him making whatever comments he made, he was expecting special treatment or felt personally slighted. So that's basically what it boils down to. A narcissist feels that it's personally against him. They're quite paranoid. They feel that that they themselves, not the entire restaurant clientele, not all the other diners, but they themselves are being targeted, and they believe that they themselves deserve special treatment compared to everybody else. So in this scenario, I don't think James Corden is thinking that, if what he's saying is true. So I would say that it's not narcissism. He just feels that the service isn't good enough and he's very frustrated. However, if the version of events were more like other people had described, and I've said this before, there are more witnesses saying that than just James Corden, you make your mind up about which version is true. And if he really demanded drinks this second, and he demanded that drinks were taken off, then yeah, absolutely. He's got this inflated, exaggerated sense of self-important. He's being entitled, he's being litigious. And if that's true, then it appears that his apology could be a cynical attempt in damage control. So he knows that it's blowing up in social media, and he knows that it could even affect his job, could affect his sponsorship, could affect his stock in Hollywood, basically. So it's like damage control apology to try and make himself look better in an already bad situation. If all of that is true, then absolutely that is very much the textbook behaviour of a narcissist. So to conclude, this was an infamous incident, possibly blown out of proportion. I think so. James Corden does seem to have got egg on his face. Just goes to show that old adage, you can't make an omelette without pissing off a few celebrities. Is James Corden exhibiting typical narcissism in this behaviour? depends on the version of events. He clearly lost his temper, clearly was being rude and impetuous. In my opinion, if it's the first scenario, as he says, then he's just irritated, still inexcusable, but not necessarily narcissism. In the second scenario, more traits of narcissism. What else did we learn in this episode? We learned generally about what the traits of narcissism were, especially in the context of a conflict. That's all I've got to say. Buy my goddamn book. It's awesome. Check me out on Instagram and TikTok. Links in the descriptions below. Have a blessed day. Stay euthymic and do not forget, I love you.